Alright, good afternoon everybody. My name is Ryan and my topic today deals with concussions in football. And my main claim is the current ongoing concussion problem in football will negatively affect the sport's popularity. So first we need to fully understand what a concussion is. So the Center for Disease Control and Prevention defines a concussion as a type of traumatic injury caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head, or by a hit to the body that causes the head to move rapidly back and forth. This sudden movement can cause the brain to bounce around and twist the skull, stretching and damaging the brain cells and creating chemical reactions in the brain. My first supporting claim is that it is almost impossible to prevent concussions while playing football. Nearly every player is at risk to taking hits to the head or body every play. Most notably, the offensive and defensive line who, in every play, take extreme physical contact. Truth is, you cannot play football without taking hits. Therefore, concussions will always be a risk when playing football. In the last 4 years alone, the NFL has accounted for 800 concussions, either during a game or practice. To try and contain and lower these numbers, the NFL introduced the concussion protocol in 2009. So basically, anytime a player is identified of possibly having a concussion, they must pass through a protocol test with a team physician and neurotrauma consultant before being cleared to return to the game. If they do not pass this test, they will not be able to return to the game. Even though I think that was smart for the NFL to add this, I still don't think that it helps prevent concussions or lowers the number, as we've seen an increase in concussions since 2009 when it was implemented. My second supporting claim is that the long-term effects of concussions are not worth playing football. In the last couple of years, there have been NFL players such as Chris Borland and AJ Tarpley who were extremely expressive that their concerns of health were more important than football. They both retired after just 1 year playing in the NFL. In a recent interview with ESPN, Borland stated, "I just honestly want to do what's best for my health. From what I've researched and what I've experienced, I don't think it's worth the risk." Studies have shown that retired players who have suffered one or more concussions develop worse cognitive and memory issues such as dementia, depression, and chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. Boston College recently engaged in a study of 165 deceased people who had played football at either the high school, college, or professional level. In this study, they discovered that CTE was present in 131 of the 165 people at a rate of 79%. When only looking at the players that played professionally, the study found that CTE was present in 87 of the 91, 96%. CTE is becoming the biggest fear long-term after a concussion because it cannot be diagnosed until after you are dead. And the symptoms that come from having CTE include rage, depression, confusion, memory loss, and advanced dementia. My third and final supporting claim is that the concussion problem is resulting in families not choosing to put their child in football. In 2014, the Associated Press conducted a poll to see how parents felt about enrolling their kid in football. 460 of the 1,000 adults indicated that they were uncomfortable putting their child in football due to concussion risks. At the high school level, football accounts for 60% of concussions in all sports. The National Federation of State High School Association released information that 1.1 million students had played football during the 2012-2013 season. That number was down 10,000 athletes from the year before and 20,000 down from 2009. Even though that was just a fraction of an amount, I believe that with more knowledge and more educated parents, they will be willing not to put their kids into football because of the risks. In conclusion, the concussion problem in football will negatively affect the sport's popularity because concussions are impossible to prevent while playing football. The long-term effects are not worth the risk, and because we will see more families become more hesitant in signing up their children in football. Thank you.
Gesundheit. And again. All right, Ryan, the proposition's clearly identified, although it seems like your first two supporting points are only minimally related to the ultimate argument about whether or not it's going to be popular. I do see a connection there. There's a chain of arguments that you're building there, but I think you need a little bit more development on that third point to make it work. I like the definition that you had at the beginning. There really wasn't a layout of what the supporting structure was going to be for the audience, so we just have to hang on as you go along. And most of the time it's relatively clear, which is good, but I think it would be appropriate for you to give us a roadmap at the beginning of the speech as we described. Internally, the structure is clear. The signposts are labeled as you go from point to point. I thought your transitions were also very nice, so everything flowed together very smoothly. You do a good job explaining the assumptions on each of the topics for the most part. One thing that I think is a little bit problematic is, except for the examples and one of the surveys that you referred to, you're not very consistent about citing the sources, and you need to be much more consistent about that. There are a couple of places where it refers to studies, and then we also had a study that did, you specified what the number of deceased football players were, but I don't know who was responsible for that study. I don't know where it was published. That's one of those things that I think you need to do a little bit more vigorous citation of in the presentation. Again, I don't doubt that the information that you have is accurate here. I just think that you need to be a little more consistent in letting us know as an audience where the information came from. I like the example that you had of the football players who retired after the first year, and one of them talked about what they perceived as being the risks. I think you need a little bit more material like that on that third point, because basically what you've done with the first 2 points is set up the notion that these things are particularly dangerous, hazardous, so on and so forth, and they present big problems. And then you quantified the number of concussions as 800. I think it was over a 4-year period. That was a little. That's when I was kind of looking for a source and I didn't see it. I assume it's probably the NFL when you were talking about the protocols. So the 800 concussions over a 4-year period, we do need to have a little bit of context on that. Obviously, if that's 4 years, that's 200 concussions a year. But I don't know how many players that represents, especially out of the total number of players. So I think you could probably put that into context, and that would make that argument a little bit more convincing. Here's the thing. When you get that to the point where you're on your third point, if you can show that families not only perceive that concussions are dangerous, but they perceive that the likelihood that their child is going to be affected by this in some way, then I think that the argument's going to be a little bit stronger. The one statistic you had near the end that said 60% of the concussions in high school sports were with football, that I immediately, it's immediately popping in my head, well, wait a second, doesn't this sound like it would be a problem for all kinds of sports? And then your arguments after that says we've declined 10,000 or 20,000, but that's in all sports, I don't think it's specified football, and yeah, well, then you need the direct quote there, because that's, I think, a little bit problematic. And the inference is that that's because people withdrew because of the concussion thing. That's, I think, probably not a bad inference, but like I said, I think you could use a little bit more link on that. All right, thank you.